What is up, everybody? Welcome to episode 74 of the Hot Soap Podcast. I'm your host, Zach Nunez, joined as always by Josh, Mark, and Austin, who is preaching Prairie View team total tonight. Now, you'll be watching this episode the day following this recording, which means that you'll be able to see whether or not Prairie View scored 67 points last night. Regardless, it's gross and you shouldn't follow it. But sometimes you'll make money betting on these awful teams to score a moderate amount of points.
We've been doing well. Austin and I, we've been riding this and we've been doing well on it so far. So
yeah, and our only losses are usually heartbreakers, by 1 or 2 points.
The last two I had were
Creighton
a point and a half and a half a point.
Dude, Creighton was bad. That one last night was bad.
Losing that on the hook is
on the hook.
Yeah. All right.
Absolutely brutal.
So we got a fun episode today. We're going to be talking about the 2023 Baseball Hall of Fame ballot. The deadline for that is coming up soon, right, Mark?
January, I think.
January. So
January.
We're going to be taking a little bit of a different spin that we've done in recent years, partially because we've done this episode 4 times at this point, probably. So we're going to be taking a little bit of a different focus when it comes to looking at the ballot this year, but we'll get into that momentarily. So before we start, make sure to follow us on Twitter at Hot Soap Pod. That's at Hot Soap Pod on Twitter. Here on the YouTubes, follow or subscribe to the channel, like the video, this one that you're watching. Comment on it as well if you feel like commenting on these videos. And after you subscribe, make sure to hit the notification bell as well, so you know when we go live. Not only when new episodes go live, but when we go live as a channel, whether it be whatever we want to go live with. Outside the box score every Saturday, allegedly. Maybe
allegedly. It's been a month, but every Saturday.
Every Saturday, allegedly. Is Sharp or Stupid ever going to happen again? I don't know.
Who knows?
There was a pilot. But we be doing live streams, and we usually try to schedule those a little bit further in advance. Sometimes they're a bit spur of the moment. What the hell happens, right? So that's housekeeping stuff. End of the year content. We got this episode this week. Next week, the week of Christmas, we'll be doing our top 10 movies of 2022. Mark and I will be doing it. I believe Josh will be joining us. Austin, you're more than welcome to come. I don't know how many movies you've seen this year. But if you want to be there
I've seen some movies this year.
If you want to be there for conversation, go for it. So we'll be doing that next week. And then 2 weeks from now, we will be finishing out the year with the 2022 Stovey Awards, the 3rd annual Stovey Awards celebration here on the podcast. So that's what you have to look forward to for the rest of the year. But today, I don't know if does anybody have any trivia? I do not personally. I
don't have any.
I don't.
No? All right. We'll keep it light then. On the FanDuel side of things, Josh pointed out to us on Sunday that he said, and I quote, "This might be the closest FanDuel contest ever." True. It's not untrue, for sure. I'll read the scores here. Let's get this out of the way. It was It was the closest FanDuel contest ever for 3 of us. I finished in last with 82 points. Right? My lineup didn't go well. Didn't go well. But the other 3 of these gentlemen were very close. Josh finished in 3rd with 131.6. Austin finished in 2nd with 131.68. 800 higher than Josh. And Mark finished in 1st with 132.1, 4/10 of a point higher than Austin. It was very close. Legitimately, I mean, Josh and Austin were separated by a singular receiving yard. A singular receiving yard. And Mark and Austin were separated by like 5 receiving yards in that instance. Like that was very close.
Yeah, I mean Malik Davis killed me, man.
I'm just glad it would have been ugly because I had Nico Collins, so I had to replace him day of. So I gave him Chris Moore, the other Texans guy, and then I had some extra money, so I replaced Ramondre Stevenson, who ended up not playing at all, with Derrick Henry, who had like 125 total yards and a touchdown. So
Yeah,
definitely kept me in there.
Good play. Good play.
Let me just tell you, Boston Scott, Chuba Hubbard, both touchdowns. Giants. We find a way. I get those backup running backs in there, man.
The giant killer, Boston Scott. He's now scored in all 7 of his career games against the New York Giants.
It's hilarious.
That's why I wish the Cowboys could have signed T.Y. Hilton before last week. Would have been a breeze. He's a Texan.
The Texan killer.
Yeah. Texan killer.
He does see him in the Super Bowl.
Dude, it's just like Derrick Henry playing against the Jaguars.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Derrick Henry goes against the Jaguars. He's going for 250 and 3. Yeah. That's just how it'd be. So a bit of an update. We got 4 weeks left in the regular season here. Now, I think we should continue doing FanDuel through the NFL postseason. That's just me. We may or may not continue doing that. I'll say yes because I don't think these guys have any incentive to say no. So
I'm down with that.
Yeah, so we're going to keep doing it through the NFL postseason. But as it stands right now, 4 weeks to go in the regular season, Mark is beginning to pull away a little bit. He's in first place with 43 points. Austin is in second with 37. So it's a 6-point gap there between the two. Josh is in third with another 6-point gap at 31 points. And myself, I'm bringing up the rear with 29 points. I was starting to gain a little bit of ground on Josh the last couple weeks. And then I should have given myself like negative points for this lineup that I had this week. That shit was awful. Yeah, so that's FanDuel. We will be giving out our week 15 lineups at the end of the show, like we do always. Also, like Josh said in the chat a few minutes ago, I like how he silently responds to things that I'm saying in our chat here on StreamYard.
To say them out loud. He goes into the private chat, which people cannot see.
Yeah. Rest in peace, Mike Leach. Mississippi State football coach passed away at the age of 61 today, due to some sort of heart condition or heart.
Some say it was COVID compilation.
Compilation.
I watched a compilation. I watched a Mike Leach compilation.
Get a massive heart attack on Sunday.
Yeah, that seems most likely scenario. A true unique figure in the world of college football. It's horribly sad that in the middle of his, it's toward the end still, but this team hasn't even finished up the season, and they'll be playing their bowl game whenever that is, without their head coach. Condolences here from the Hot Stove people to the family and friends of Mike Leach, anybody who played for him, anybody who currently plays for him, anybody who knew him. He seemed like a great character and, like I said, a truly unique force in the world of college football. So moving on to our content for today, we'll be talking about the 2023 Baseball Hall of Fame ballots. Like I said, we've done this the last few years where we kind of go through and nominate players ourselves and then come up with a colloquial hot stove ballot. We will still be doing that, but we'll push that to the end of the conversation today. And I figure that since we've done this a few times, some of these bigger names on the list, and there is a bit of turnover on this ballot because of certain players falling off. Your Kurt Schilling, your Roger Clemens, your Barry Bonds, players falling off of the ballot. And players, having been elected, there is a little bit of turnover. There's 14 first ballot finalists this year, which I feel is high. Is that true? Is that higher than normal, Mark?
Not necessarily. There's a lot of new guys that come on the ballot every year. It's just so many of them are forgettable, quite frankly, that it's like the whole it's an honor to be on the ballot thing, which there's
you have to get a certain percentage to stay on the ballot, correct?
5%. You have to get 5% of the vote just to stay on the ballot. A lot of the guys don't. You'll see quite a few guys on the ballot this year that won't get a vote.
Yeah.
So
good. What we'll be doing is we'll be talking Partially is just a ways to bring up. I don't know if you've seen the memes, but you're hanging out with the boys. You're eventually going to get to a part of the night where you're just naming random athletes.
We're naming dudes tonight, baby.
We're naming dudes tonight for sure.
Yeah.
So partially just a means to name dudes, but other partially, we can talk about some good careers. There are a couple of first ballot Hall of Famers that I think are worthy conversations to be had, whether or not they should be elected to the Hall of Fame. But the rest of them, at least it'll be a fun time to talk about some dudes, right? Naming dudes. And then at the end, we'll talk about some guys who, have, I'll say, debatable cases. And because I have, for example, I have a question for Mark based on a couple of the guys on the ballot this year. We'll get to that. We'll talk about, some guys that maybe we looked over last year, some guys that we were considering, and teetering on, and then we'll give our official ballot picks. And as per usual, to receive election to the official Hot Stove Baseball Hall of Fame, you have to receive 3 out of 4 votes from the panel. So it's a 75% vote share will get you in. So without further ado, Mark, I don't know if you said you had a blind comparison. Do you want to wait until that player comes up, or would you like to start with that?
No, I think we should start with it because this guy is it's his first year on the ballot. So he will come up in this part of the conversation. And I'll show it right here. These are all the same statistics for 3 relief pitchers.
Okay.
So we've got reliever A, 52 and 53 record, 2.86 ERA, 10.5 strikeouts per 9, just over 4,000 batters faced in his career, a 1.48 ERA plus. Remember, ERA plus 100 is league average. Anything above that is 1 percentage point better than league average. So he's 48% better than the league average pitcher, 6.8 hits per 9, 2.9 strikeout to walk ratio. Our JAWS is Jay Jaffe's JAWS measurement strictly for relief pitchers. He measures it differently for relief pitchers due to the, it's the most different position in the sport. So that's just their JAWS for relievers. 6 All-Star games, 3-time top 5 finisher in Cy Young voting. That's the same for pitcher 2, also finished 3 times in the top 5, 2.87 ERA, lower K per 9, faced a few more batters, but a lower ERA plus, a little worse hits per 9, better strikeout to walk, clearly a better R JAWS, and then the third player, just 3 very similar guys. Now, do any of you have a guess you could venture? I'll say 2 of these guys are in the Hall of Fame, 1 of them is on the ballot.
Then I'm almost certain I can tell you. I don't know who exactly is who, but I have assuming I know exactly who these 3 players are. Not to say that there's much of a pool to pick from, because we only have 1 first-time reliever on the ballot this year, and there are only 4 relievers in the Baseball Hall of Fame anyways. So,
is that right?
There's more than 4.
Is there 7?
I believe there's 7. Yeah.
Jesus Christ! And what? Just to clarify, this guy has a Cy Young as a relief pitcher.
Yes. Yeah. Option C does have a Cy Young as a relief pitcher.
This seems like the easiest question ever. If you know that, I mean,
not necessarily.
Right? Do a lot of relief pitchers have Cy Youngs?
No.
There's more than you would think.
Yeah, there are more than you would think, but not a lot per se. So do you want me to try and match these players to their stats?
Yeah. I mean, if you would like to try.
I will say B is Francisco Rodriguez, K-Rod, who we'll be talking about. Mm-hmm. I will say C. I can't remember what relievers have Cy Young awards, so that's the hard part about it. I'll say C is, I don't know, we'll go with Goose Gossage. Right. Okay. Let's throw that name out there. And then I'll say A is Trevor Hoffman.
Okay, Josh.
Okay.
You put Gimme Hoff in the
I like Hoff. One? I like Hoff for number 1. I don't think he ever got a Cy Young. I don't know how a Cy Young was ever given to a closing pitcher. I mean, I guess maybe it seems shocking. True.
Wait, the last one that happened was 2003 with Eric Gagne. So
I actually didn't know that. I had no idea that Eric Gagne won a Cy Young.
Yeah, that was in the middle of his 85 consecutive saves without blowing one or whatever it was.
Jesus.
Yeah, I have no clue. My guess for K-Rod would have been B2 just based on luck.
Okay. So, Austin, do you agree the consensus is one's Hoffman, one's K-Rod? Because one of them has to be K-Rod.
And one of them's an old guy. Yeah.
Do you have another guy you would want to throw out at all?
That K per 9 is crazy. No, I can't even think of someone. 10.5 K per 9.
You got two of them right. A is Francisco Rodriguez, the one with better numbers than Trevor Hoffman. I didn't know that. And C is Bruce Sutter. Rest in peace. Just passed away a couple of months ago. Former closer for the Braves, Cardinals, all that stuff. But looking at those numbers between K-Rod and Hoffman specifically, the top two, and you guys, probably rightly assumed that the better of the two would be Trevor Hoffman. How is Francisco Rodriguez not a Hall of Famer?
I'll tell you why. I'll tell you how he's not a Hall of Famer. The Baseball Hall of Fame hates relief pitching.
Also, he is top 5 in saves, Josh.
He's 4th.
But he doesn't have 500, does he?
He does not.
No, he doesn't have 600, which is what Hoffman had, which is the only reason why he would be in over him. But there's also a reason I included win-loss, even though, typically we don't think about that. Losses for closers is kind of a big thing.
Yeah, because usually, a lot of times if you blow a save, you lose.
Yeah, you get the loss. So I would say for closing pitchers, losses is a fine stat to look at. It wins, not so much. Who cares? But just in terms of overall career record, and now obviously Jaws has Hoffman as the better of the two because he saved 150 more games than Francisco Rodriguez. So that would make sense. But these are shockingly similar numbers for a guy that I don't think is going to get much consideration for the Hall of Fame, and a guy that was like a second or third ballot Hall of Famer, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, I'm looking at the numbers now. K-Rod is, like I mentioned, 4th all-time in saves at 437, a career 2.86 ERA, as it says on the stats there. What sticks out to me is the relative consistency of it all. I was having this conversation with somebody last week about Kenley Jansen, right? And about why the Red Sox gave Kenley Jansen all of the money that they gave him. Because frankly, for a 34-year-old reliever, however old he is, it's a lot of money. But also, just speaking about it logically, right? There, relievers and closers, relievers in baseball is such a volatile position that not only if you find a guy who's good, right? That's number one, right? There are plenty of relievers out there who are good. But there aren't plenty of relievers who are good and consistent over a year-to-year basis. That's the problem of the position. And Kenley Jansen, for example, has only had a ERA over 3.5 once in his career, and yada yada. That was a whole thing for a different conversation. But you look at K-Rod's numbers; they're very similar in that way. Again, he only had a 16-year career, only had an ERA over 3.5. 3 times technically, the last season in Detroit.
Yeah, the last one in Detroit.
So if you want to throw that out, it would be twice over the course of his career, and an ERA over 3 only 4 times. A remarkably consistent reliever, especially for a position that consistency is not guaranteed, and at a time in which the defined closer for a specific team was a little bit different. The position itself was managed differently, I should say, in that teams not only had more defined closers, they worked more often than even your defined closers work today. So to remain that consistent over that period of time, he has a career ERA plus of 144. Like you said, a K per 9 over 10, and also being fourth all time in saves. It's clear numbers wise, he's one of, even if you want to discount it here or there, one of the handful of the best players to ever do this specific thing in this sport. And it's the same thing with third base, which we'll probably touch on Scott Rowland again today. But like, there's no sense in limiting a certain position to only a certain few players who reach a certain few milestones or win a Cy Young.
And looking at this now as well, I mean, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, like 6 seasons ish where K-Rod wasn't the closer for his team.
Yes, roughly.
So, that's 430 saves at, just average 30 for those years, which
his average was 31 saves a year.
Yeah, so 31 saves a year. Just call it 30 times 5 or 6, 150, 180 saves. I mean, we're talking about a guy that's, in knocking on the door of the 600 save club. And it's not like he was taken out of the closer role. When he first came up with Anaheim, Troy Percival was the closer. He was filthy. And K-Rod was a setup guy for him. And then when he took the closer role from Troy Percival, he went absolutely nuts. Of course, had the 62 save season in 08. Then he goes to the Brewers. That's when John Axford was one of the best closers in baseball. They weren't going to take him out of the closer role, so they kept him there. Same with when he was with the Mets, he was the closer, but not always. There was a weird thing going on there, if I remember correctly. Goes to Baltimore. That's when they had Jim Johnson.
42 innings. That's not bad.
Yeah. But goes to Baltimore in 2013. Jim Johnson was coming off a 50 save season, so they're going to have him be the closer. And then his last year in Detroit, when he was washed up, granted, he had a 7.80 ERA. But outside of that, it's not like he was taken out of the role because he stunk. It's because there was someone that just so happened to be one of the dominant closers in baseball in front of him.
K-Rod had 62 saves in 2008. Did I miss that?
Yeah, single season record.
Holy fuck.
Yeah, I mean, we hadn't even considered, or we hadn't even mentioned the fact that he has the record for most saves in a season.
Yeah.
Hello?
A record that will likely never be broken.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because closers aren't used like that.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Good teams should. Could you imagine looking at closer stats coming up and seeing games started and it'd be like, what? Why would
let's look at this way. I think about it this way. He saved, not pitched in, completed a save in over a third of his team's games that year.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't know if that's a testament to how good the Angels were that year or how good it's obviously him. Because the Angels, I don't even know if that means you're good. You're in.
They went 100.
It technically means that you're in a bunch of save situations. But
they were 162. He had as many saves as the team had losses.
Oh, 100. Okay,
yeah.
They won 100 games that year.
Yeah,
pretty
good. Shout out to Howdy Kendrick on that team, by the way.
Because I was looking at another. Was that the year he tore his ACL jumping on the?
Howdy Kendrick.
Was that him?
No, that was Kendrys Morales. Tore his ACL jumping on home plate after a walk-off home run.
Oh,
Angels,
yes,
right?
With that.
Yes, he was on the Angels at the time.
Kendrys, tomato.
Close enough.
Yeah, we can start here with one of the highlights of the class, and it's just, I think, conversations surrounding him and Billy Wagner, who we can kind of lump together. Billy Wagner, obviously, to a lesser extent, almost across the board. But Billy Wagner, again, one of the 10 best relievers ever.
I disagree. I'd say Billy Wagner was a better pitcher, which is why, Billy Wagner's career ERA is 2.3.
All right, I will take that back. I'm sorry.
That ERA plus stuff's 187.
Yeah, Billy Wagner is arguably the most dominant reliever in the history of baseball.
I'll take that back. I'm sorry. I did not mean not really what I meant to say. It's what came out. That's beside the point, right? So, but anyways, you put these two together. There are two of the 6, let's just say 6 or 7
Mm.
best players at their position in the history of the sport. It's not really a question of like, are they deserving of the Hall of Fame? It's a philosophical question about what you allow in the Hall of Fame.
Mm-hmm.
Or so. Yeah.
And
I will say,
yeah. I was just gonna say, just to lump it in, with those guys a little bit, because I think it's really interesting, is a guy that no one really cares about on the ballot, and I can see why. Houston Street is a sneaky, really good pitcher, and it has similar numbers. I broke down same.
Yeah.
I'll share the
numbers
sub 3
here. ERA, a 141 ERA plus.
Because I got the I did the thing where I just put the same numbers as I did for the other ones.
And he's a Rookie of the Year candidate. Oh wow, look at
Rookie of the Year winner. So 42 and 34, 2.95 ERA, 9 strikeouts per 9. Faced a lot less guys. He retired when he was 33 years old. He wasn't like a full-time player until he was 23. Yeah. Really only had
that's what'll kill him, is that he only has 300 saves.
He started after K-Rod and retired before or same year.
Yeah. So, that hurts him. But 141 ERA plus, very similar to the other guys. Same as Trevor Hoffman.
240 save seasons, 40 plus save seasons.
Yeah, the 2 All-Star games, no top 5 Cy Young votes. Hurt. Did win Rookie of the Year, which is something. It's an award. But another guy that I don't know if anyone's going to vote for Houston Street. He legitimately might not get a single vote. And I'm not saying he deserves to be a Hall of Famer, but it's just really interesting when looking at relief pitching that some of these guys, you forget how good they were.
Yeah. And I mean, it's, again, good consistently year over year at such a volatile position, I think is the really important part of it.
I'll just, sorry.
Say, Josh?
I was just going to say my question out now that it's kind of lulled. Are we just going to nominate one guy each from our ballot and go around until we each have our however many we put?
No, I mean, I figured we'd start with these guys who are first year on the ballot, talk about a bunch of them since they won't get into the Hall of Fame, and then kind of pick up loose ends from over there. Basically.
Okay. Yeah, could I talk about a first timer in a really negative way?
Before you get to that, Austin, I just want to ask. How many of you guys have K-Rod and Billy Wagner on your ballot? I have both of them.
I have both of them.
I have both of them.
Okay, just making sure.
We can put it in the private chat and keep our ballot going.
Yeah, I mean, I'll do that. I'm gonna keep track because I'm gonna put out graphics. I'll send them over to you, Nunez, to put on Twitter.
Okay.
Low-key, how do you get added to the ballot? Like Jason Worth just happened to have retired at the right time, and they just put any player on the ballot.
10 years service time. There are requirements that you have to meet to even be considered for the ballot, and then you get put on it if people think you're worthy of having your name on it.
Who did he suck off to get on this ballot?
All right, Austin. Who do you want to bring up?
I guess this goes into Josh's point, and I think one of either of these two guys qualify for this, but R.A. Dickey being on a Hall of Fame ballot is, I mean, that's absurd.
Well, he fits Nunez's one block of what makes you a Hall of Fame player, at least in the NFL.
One season.
Did he only have one? I thought it was a string of 3 seasons that were.
No, he won the Cy Young, and
he had other seasons where he had a 3.70 ERA. If you consider that a Hall of Fame really
R.A. Dickey had a sub 3.5 ERA 3 times over the course of his career.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't understand this at all. If you look even at his ERA plus, he's 103. I mean, he's the most average guy of all time, and he had a Cy Young season. Are we putting those guys on the ballot?
Well, I think that's why it's kind of fun to bring up the fact that guys like Bronson Arroyo are on the ballot
him too.
this year.
This is disturbing. Does he even have a single year under 4 ERA?
Bronson Arroyo had 2 good years.
Bronson Arroyo had
3 or 4.
He's an all-star. He's won a World Series.
Here's the thing. Bronson Arroyo.
He led the league in innings pitched in 2006.
He made 1 all-star game.
9 straight years of 199 or more innings.
He led the league
That's-
in batters hit in 2004. He had 20 people that year.
Wow,
Yeah.
this
His,
is one
his, I
All-Star
mean, this,
game.
He
is a
allowed
joke.
46 home runs in 2011.
I
it is
remember
a
that.
goddamn joke. I mean,
Everyone was hitting bombs off of Bronson.
yeah, that was a tough one.
46.
I could have gone yard off of Bronson Arroyo in 2011.
Pre Homer Bailey in Cincinnati. Am I right, everybody?
In
They
2011.
played together.
I was just saying Homer Bailey.
Before
becoming,
Homer Bailey. Yeah.
allowing all the homers Bailey.
Yeah, he's definitely a red if he were, but I mean, yeah, he sucks. I mean, anyone with a year or a career high or a career ERA over 4 shouldn't even be talked about. I don't even want to hear their name brought up.
I mean, it'd be different, I guess, if it was like you had like a 5 to 10 year run of Kershaw, and then
Sure.
he just plays till he's 50, and
then you became Bronson Arroyo.
Yeah, and then you just became Bronson Arroyo for your last like 7 years, and your ERA was 4.01, but you had the craziest stretch.
Yeah,
Mhm.
Sure, but I mean,
yeah,
what
but
are
I don't
we?
want to hear it.
These are not that.
That's a joke. We got another.
Yeah, I
joke
mean,
one?
what are our thoughts on Andre Ethier being on the ballot? Am I right, everybody?
I mean,
Andre Ethier is a classic case of if he stayed healthy, there would actually be a conversation. Because Andre Ethier had a career OPS plus of, I believe it was 122. Yeah, 122.
Slightly above average. He is a 21 win player over 12 seasons.
285, 359, 463 slash line, really good numbers. Was consistent when he played, but just never really played a lot.
Well, I don't know if I agree with that. He played more than 130 games for the first 10 years of his career.
And then just
was it that long?
Yes.
Yeah. He also, if I remember correctly, retired early, didn't he?
Probably because of those injuries. He was 35, but he was a late start. He got called up at 24, and
it's
That's
just
solid 37th round.
Andre Ethier was a very solid player.
Yeah, I mean, he's
not a Hall of Famer,
certainly a guy.
He was a good player.
Yeah,
I mean, OPS plus 122 for your career.
Slightly better than your typical Jag. You know,
he's certainly no Mike Napoli.
Hey, Mike Napoli, Big Hoss King. All right,
Mike Napoli. By the way, I did about 4 hours of research this afternoon, and I have notes on every single player.
That's good.
Mike Napoli, 267 career home runs. That's good for 10th among people whose primary position was catcher. So 10th among catchers in home runs, 13th in slugging percentage with 475, and 22nd in OPS with 821.
Which is funny because he's just like matter of factly not a Hall of Famer.
Absolutely not. Not even a little. But listen, man, I pulled good numbers for everyone except Jason Worth, who Josh brought up, where the only note I have is the one time that he was on a rehab assignment for the Syracuse Chiefs and someone yelled, "Hey, worthless," from the crowd. One of the funniest things I've ever heard. My dad and I were just like, that guy's a genius.
I mean, we can probably just scoot by the J.J. Hardys of the world, the Matt Canes of the world. Shout out Matt Cain, though.
Doesn't Matt Cain perfect game?
He does. I have notes on Matt Cain and
why is that not on his pro reference page or baseball reference page? I'm like, didn't he have a perfect game? That should.
I feel like they should list that. I feel like that's a thing they should list.
Look at this. Between Matt Cain and Jared Weaver, just something interesting. Yes,
is Jared Weaver on the ballot this year?
Yes, he is.
Yes.
Both of them had 6 year. Both of them had 6 year peaks. ERA is within 100th of a point of each other. ERA plus, each of them around 120. It's 124 and 126. Over 200 innings pitched a year. 2 World Series for Cain. Perfect game. Jared Weaver won 20 games. Finished top 5 in Cy Young voting 3 times. Both of them had really good peaks.
I'd like to say also that Baseball Reference does have peak calculators based on their WAR. And They are 7-year peaks, so they're a little bit longer generally than you would think about. But for example, I'm looking at Matt Cain right now. Matt Cain's peak 7-year WAR was 29, which is okay.
Low.
It's not good.
I also don't like WAR for pitchers. I never have.
The average 7-year peak WAR for a Hall of Fame pitcher, according to BRF WAR, is 50.
Yeah.
So,
not saying they're Hall of Famers, but just like that's the thing with a lot of guys on the ballot. It's like, oh yeah, there was a stretch where like both of them. There was a stretch where Jared Weaver and Matt Cain were really good pitchers.
Naming dudes, man. All right, Mark, can you tell me anything about Johnny Peralta? I've legitimately never heard of him before.
You don't remember Johnny Peralta?
Yeah,
as some people would pronounce it, because the H is right after the J. Hit 202 home runs in his career.
This guy looks like, I'm sorry to cut you off, but he looks like the jaggiest jag to ever jag.
He's interesting character, but 202 career home runs, played for Cleveland, Detroit, finished up in St. Louis. Good power hitter at the shortstop position. Never really could play shortstop though, which is the problem, despite the fact he played there pretty much his entire career.
Is this not the dude that just threw hands in the Dominican League?
No, that was Asdrubal Cabrera. Yeah, you've got your wrong Cleveland shortstop.
Yeah. That's a bad look. That's
a bad
look. Both Dominican.
Yeah, they played together. Like, Asdrubal basically took over for Peralta as the starting shortstop in Cleveland once he went to Detroit. But
if you wanted to know, Jahani Peralta finished 4th in the National League in defensive WAR in 2014.
Yeah, he had one randomly good year at shortstop for the Cardinals. It was very strange.
Yeah. It's a fun fact.
Sounds like Jahadi Poo Poo, if you know what I mean. He stinks. Get him out of here.
But yeah, I mean, with the other two we haven't mentioned, Jacoby Ellsbury and John Lackey as well. Shout out to them. Jacoby Ellsbury, the biggest spy in baseball history.
My only note for Jacoby Ellsbury is we'll always have 2011 when he finished second in MVP voting to Justin Verlander and hit 32 home runs, one of the strangest seasons.
I got one for you on John Lackey.
Yeah.
How's about John Lackey, Austin? We were talking about nearly a 4 ERA in his career, 3.92. Led the league in ERA, lowest ERA in 2007 with an above 3 ERA. Mm-hmm. That's what led the league in 2007. 3.01. So I mean, it's really technical, but yeah, that was league's best.
Even still, there was no guy in the what John Lackey National League, American League
League
that had a sub 3 ERA that year.
Mm-hmm.
Not one.
Tough.
Okay.
I have
actually not as bad though. Lackey actually was more dominant, I think, than I thought.
Yeah, if we were talking about this guy in 2002 instead of 2022, I would probably call him a future Hall of Famer, but 20 years is a long time.
Yeah.
When he came up for that World Series winning Angels team, he was hot shit. I mean, everyone knew who John Lackey was. He was a hero for the World Series team, had a dominant World Series start against the Giants. And just never really became that guy. He was also on the 2013 Red Sox and played a big role on that team. So
if you look at John Lackey's headshot, he kind of looks like a Chris Beard type, if you know what I mean.
Ugly son of a bitch. And there might be something to that.
Maybe I'll look up John Lackey domestic abuse.
You think John Lackey's from Scranton, or?
I mean,
I'm not going to say there's definitely something to that, but there might be.
Oh yeah, he's a 2-time domestic violence guy.
Is
he?
Jesus.
Yeah.
It looks like it.
No. Oh no. All right. We'll move on here to our last first ballot player. The other one that I think deserves a legitimate look at his career and accomplishments, and that would be one Carlos Beltran, one of the best Puerto Rican players to ever play in the major leagues. One of the 5 players in Major League history with 400 home runs and 300 stolen bases, 435 career homers, 312 stolen bags over the years, 279 average, with a 119 OPS plus. Mark, I think this is Carlos Beltran is the biggest example of a guy that I'm genuinely torn on.
Okay.
For whether or not he should be on my ballot. I don't know if he's on yours. If he is, I want you to make the case for me. If not, let's talk it out.
Yeah, I will. He is on my ballot, and I will make the case right now. Let me just show this tab instead. Boom. Here are his numbers compared to Hall of Famer Andre Dawson. Now, a lot of people like to debate Andre Dawson's, Hall of Fame case because they're like, oh, does this guy really deserve it? Their numbers are identical. Same batting average. Home runs, Dawson's got him by 3. RBIs, Dawson's got him by 4. Stolen bases, Dawson's got him by 2. Slugging, 4 points apart in favor of Beltran. OPS plus exactly the same. 50 hits separate these guys.
Beltran's got double the walks, almost.
Double the walks.
Oh,
Much better on base guy than Dawson was. Dawson never really drew a lot of walks, but their numbers are identical. Identical. And one of these guys is in the Hall of Fame. To me, that's saying Carlos Beltran's a Hall of Famer. Beltran, better defender as well, played center field. Dawson always played a corner spot for the most part. He came up as a center fielder, but was more known as a corner outfielder. WAR goes Beltran's way. WAR 7 goes Beltran's way. JAWS goes Beltran's way. Offensive WAR and defensive WAR. All the advanced numbers go to Beltran. Dawson's got the MVP in 1987, which you can argue he shouldn't have even won that. The Cubs were the last place team in the National League. I say Carlos Beltran's a Hall of Famer. He's on my ballot because I look at these numbers and say, how can you have identical numbers to a Hall of Famer and not be in the Hall of Fame? I don't care about the cheating scandal in 2017 because he was like 50 years old and that wasn't helping his case at all.
What do you say to the people who say that he shouldn't be considered because of his 2011 stint with the Giants where they won World Series on either sides of his year with the team? What do you have to say to that?
That ended up being a real bad trade by the Giants because it was a straight up trade, one player for one player, Carlos Beltran for Zach Wheeler going back to the Mets.
Oh.
So the Giants should have had Zach Wheeler this entire time. And instead they got Carlos Beltran and won like 84 games. If I remember correctly, didn't make the playoffs.
My actual only question with Carlos Beltran is who he goes in as. Is it a Royal? Is it a Met? It's probably a Met, right?
It's a blank cap.
You think so? Because he's just been everywhere?
Yeah, because won the World Series in St. Louis, had the postseason heroics in Houston. It didn't really like Kansas City, and Mets fans hate him for whatever reason. I know the reason. It's because he struck out against Wainwright in 2006 to send the Cardinals to the World Series. That's why Mets fans hate him. So I think he would go in with a blank cap.
Okay. He's on my ballot, too. You can chalk that up.
It's on my ballot.
I'm sorry. There's an ad playing in my in my freaking baseball reference page, and I could not figure out how to stop it. I lean towards yes, partially because, again, I mentioned that he is one of the 5 players to go 400, 300 over the course of his career. I will say the rest of his metrics are good. They're good, but they all, if you look at all of the advanced metrics, which is something I hang on a lot, partially because I don't have the eye test. I didn't watch Carlos Beltran play. What the hell do you want from me? All of them read as like very borderline, which I think is cause for the conversation. His Hall of Fame monitor, according to Baseball Reference, is 126. Hall of Fame standards rating is 52. Both of them, roughly around average. And if you look at his numbers compared to the other 19 center fielders that are in the Hall of Fame, I know it's an imperfect science because the distinction.
That's where I bring this up.
Yeah,
he's ninth. If you're top 10 at a position,
he is 9th overall, and the rest of generally speaking, his numbers are right around the average.
Duke?
those players, and partially
Mhm.
because that's just because of how good a lot of the players, Willie Mays, Ty Cobb, those kinds of
Mhm.
players, those outliers kind of draw the numbers up, generally speaking. But again, ninth all time in aggregate metrics here for all center fielders, including the 19 that are, based on the 19 that are in the Hall of Fame. I think personally that is enough. I think this is a bit of a thinking man's Hall of Fame induction, if you will. Now it's pretty easy for it to not be. I think you can make the case for both again, right? Like the 400, 300 thing. Like that's a pretty easy benchmark to be like, only 4 other guys have done that in the history of the
Mhm.
sport. That's an easy benchmark. The other thing is, like, if you look at a lot of these numbers, he just rates out, partially because of the amount of data that we have now, happens to rate out at a lot better than a lot of other guys who made it into the Hall of Fame previously, which I think extends or makes his case better because you're able to compare him to guys who are lesser than him at the same position who are currently in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, he's on my ballot. The other guys have him on his as well, and it's interesting too and we can take this right into another guy. When you look below him in center field rankings, you see Andrew Jones, and Andrew
Yes.
Jones, best defensive WAR by a center fielder, 24.4. Obviously, like arguably the greatest defender in center field history. I don't know about the three of you. Andrew Jones did make my ballot this year. I've been flipping on him seemingly year in and year out. Since the ballot has cleared up a little bit these past couple of years, I've been able to fit him on mine. You've got him as well, Josh?
Yeah.
I do as well.
So this is the question that I wanted to ask you, Mark. I know they're different in quite a few ways. Do you have to package Andrew Jones and Scott Rowland together?
Yes.
Because I feel as though that the argument for one is the argument for the other as well.
Now, I will say yes with a caveat. Rowland was more consistent in his career than Andrew Jones was towards the end. Now, Rowland didn't play as long, if I remember correctly. Rowland had a shorter career. I could be wrong about that, but basically,
I'm taking a look here because I'm sorry to cut you off. Look at Andrew Jones's numbers over the course of his career. He did hit 400 home runs, a career OPS plus of 111. So generally speaking, rates out as a ever so slightly above average hitter. In the most base kinds of stats. And if you look at Scott Rowland, 300 career home runs, a career 122 OPS plus. And I believe their offensive WAR numbers are probably not too far from one another. Let's take a look-see. Career offensive WAR for Scott Rowland, 52.8. And Andrew Jones is...
It was only 39.
39. Okay. But I think you have two cases of guys who, arguably Rowland... on aggregate was probably, the numbers point to him being a better hitter than Andrew Jones overall. But I think two guys that, outside of their above average, if not remarkable offensive numbers over the course of their career, what brings them into this conversation as being two of the best players defensively at their position ever. And I personally, when I was looking at it, saw them as a package deal. And I wonder if the case for Andrew Jones becomes easier due to the fact that I think if Scott Rowland didn't play third base, he would have already been in the Hall of Fame anyways. So if that's the case, then I feel like you kind of have to vote for both of them.
Yeah, I've always leaned towards Scott Rowland. I've always thought his overall career was probably better than Andrew Jones. Now, this is mainly because of the last 5 years of Andrew Jones's career, or even 6 years, where he absolutely fell off a cliff, couldn't stay healthy.
Yankees legend, man.
Like, was legitimately, not really a factor in the last 6 years.
Contrary to
go ahead.
Scott Rowland, who had 2 of his 7 All-Star games in the last 3 years of his career, a Gold Glove in his last 3 years with the Reds. I mean, that 2010 season, I think it was 2010. Let me check. Yeah, the
He was
2010
good.
season for the Reds, he played in 130 games, 20 home runs. I mean, solid All-Star.
Yeah.
He was in the MVP voting that year.
Well,
And
I mean, as we talked about a couple weeks ago, anybody can be in the MVP voting, to be fair.
this is true.
Daniel
finished
Bard.
14th.
Daniel Bard now forever has MVP 18 next to his 2022 season in Baseball Reference. And I love it. I love it.
But for
I got
how
Rowland, too,
bad
for
the
what?
last 6 years of his career were, the rest of it was amazing. I mean, you see, he hit 51 home runs, drove in 128 guys. He came up when he was 19, playing in the World Series for the Atlanta Braves, starting center fielder for a World Series team. I mean, everything about him up to that point. Yeah, the OPS plus for his career is a little low at 111. Guy hit 434 home runs. And as a center fielder, that's very impressive. A position that was dominated for a long time by, smaller guys that didn't hit for a lot of power, guys that were mainly speed defense guys. And he had the defense, the speed too, but not as much. Had the defense, had the power, with driving runs. I say Andrew Jones, even though the counting numbers might fall a little short in areas like hits, stuff like that, I'd say he's a Hall of Famer. Same with Scott Rowland, who also the counting numbers fall a little short. Barely over 300 home runs, which is a very, very respectable number, but not really a number you think of when you think Hall of Fame. It's, I want to say 316 for Rowland. That's, good number, but is it a Hall of Fame number? When you throw in the defense, I agree. I think you have to pair them both together.
Yeah, and I that's the reason that they both largely ended up on my ballot, because I remembered, having Scott Rowland on my ballot the last couple of years, and when I was looking into it, I hadn't, because I think I had one and not the other the last couple of years, most likely, and I imagine
had two because of the Bonds and Clemenses of the world. I would choose Rowland over Jones.
I had Rowland and not Jones as of late. But looking at together, especially, as you mentioned, in a year where the ballot is a little more open, a year like this, a lot more open, actually. There are, the only two guys that you can really see and be like, you have to vote for this guy, are both like, the age-old steroid conversation, right? And not only just accusatory guys, both guys who serve suspensions and yada yada. As much as I truly do not care about that myself, those are the only two guys who, aside from that, would have numbers that are like zero question, 100%, without a doubt, Hall of Famers. The rest of them, I think there's conversations to be had. There are plenty of guys on the ballot who you look at it and you're like, yeah, these guys are Hall of Famers. But I don't think any of them fall in. Obviously, since there are so many guys, so many of the better guys on here are in the latter years of their ballot stages, for example. And none of these guys really fall into that upper circle kind of tier. So
there is one guy I think that is getting towards the end of his ballot, and in my opinion, looking at just the numbers, not thinking of anything else, is should be no doubt Hall of Famer. It's just he's got the accusations towards him, and that's
Gary Sheffield. Gary Sheffield, man.
Gary Sheffield, career 140 OPS plus, 292 career average, 500 home runs. He's accused of taking steroids. There's never been any concrete evidence. It's just like Bonds, just like Clemens. And I think the biggest thing that hurts him is over here. You see all the different teams he played for. He never really had a home. He just kept bouncing around. He never felt like, he's on the Marlins, always on the Dodgers, always on the Brewers. Like, people forget he came up with the Brewers. Like, he was a third baseman from Milwaukee. But everywhere he went, he just mashed. Really, I mean, outside of Detroit and the Mets at the end of his career. But everywhere else, he was just nails. And so to me, I look at that and I say, that guy, the fact he's still on the ballot is a crime. but he also, never led the league in home runs, never led the league in RBIs, hits, any of that, because he was playing in the middle of the steroid era. So of course he wasn't going to. He was just going to hit his 45 and 110 and call it a day.
Yeah, I mean, Gary Sheffield's on my ballot. He seemed to me to have the best case out of any of these remaining non-A-Rod Manny Ramirez players. That's also not named Todd Helton, but that's a completely different conversation because Todd Helton is being jobbed once again by the Baseball Writers Association of America by happening to have played at Coors Field. The same fate that Larry Walker faced for the first 9 years of him being on the ballot. But
yeah,
maybe we'll cross that bridge when we get there in 4 years when people wake up to the fact that Todd Helton was one of the best players of his era. But that's beside the point. Gary Sheffield's on my ballot. I don't know about the rest of you. I know he's on Mark's.
He's on mine. Well. Josh, Austin?
Of course he's on mine.
I go back and forth. It was him and another old guy who kind of has the Andrew Jones, Scott Rowland argument, but also some accusations. The good Indian shortstop on the ballot.
Is this Omar Vizquel?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I narrowed it down. Like, it was basically 10th pick, and it's between him and Sheffield. I'm like, I don't know.
To me, I mean, if he got into the Hall of Fame, well, actually, I would be mad if he got into the Hall of Fame because where's this virtue signaling bullshit with Schilling compared to Vizquel? But it's just like guy was a hell of a defensive shortstop for a long time. But he wasn't Ozzie Smith. If we're throwing guys, shortstops into the Hall of Fame based on defense, Ozzie Smith is the gold standard, and he never reached that, and he was, not a good hitter. So I personally don't vote for him just because I don't think he's quite there. The accusations are not.
That's three though. So Gary Sheffield's on our ballot.
Yes, Gary Sheffield is on the hot stove ballot. Now I want to cross off a couple of guys that I've already mentioned that I will put the names out there. They're guys we've talked about before. Todd Helton is on.
Yeah, he's on mine.
Yeah,
he's on mine.
Okay. Alex Rodriguez.
He's on mine.
He's on mine.
He is on mine as well. You know my stance on steroids. I don't care. I don't care. You can take all of them. I don't give a shit. Also, again, not to attack anyone in particular. There's no sense in really even doing this anymore. But I've never understood the whole and part of this is it was brought on to me by Mark. I don't know if your opinion has changed on this at all, but a couple of years ago you told me that you would vote for your Barry Bonds or right, regardless of the steroid accusations, but wouldn't vote for someone like A-Rod or Manny Ramirez because they failed the test while they were playing.
That's still my stance.
I'm going to ask you to try and make sense of it for me because I don't quite get it. Partially because philosophically, I just, the point of punishment is to punish and then move on. And I know it keeps with the theme of the United States legal system to have offenses, regardless of how petty, follow you for the rest of your life. But personally, I don't know as if I believe that being caught as opposed to being a guy who there were rumblings about, I guess, and we probably knew took steroids. I don't know how much of a tangible difference there is. And I also don't think that personally don't really think that they serve the punishment that was handed to them for breaking the rules. I don't know as if personally permanent banishment from the annals of baseball history should also be tacked on as part of that.
Yeah, and this has always been just my personal opinion. I have no problem with people who want to, have your guys' opinion, vote for Manny, vote for A-Rod. It's just my thought process has always been Clemens, Bonds, Sheffield, even, these guys, Pudge Rodriguez, David Ortiz to an extent, it wasn't against the rules. It was frowned upon. There was no punishment in place. There was nothing saying, hey, do not do this. It was, if you couldn't. And so they did it. And that's just sort of what the lay of the land was. But once the joint drug agreement came into place in 2005 and they started handing out these suspensions, that's when I'm like, okay, you are actively breaking the rules of baseball. To me, it's hard for me to vote for a guy that actively went out of his way to break a rule that he knew was in place. And we're also talking about guys, Manny Ramirez suspended 3 times. Had to leave baseball because of it. We're not talking about a guy that
man couldn't stop.
He could not stop.
He couldn't stop.
Taking performance-enhancing drugs.
He just kept going. He loved it.
Big fan.
He was a huge fan.
Alex Rodriguez served the biggest suspension for drugs in the history of baseball, 162 games. And his part in the whole biogenesis clinic and everything that went on there. So, to me, saying, okay, these guys went out of their way to break a rule that was implemented while they were playing. It's not like the rule, they hadn't heard of the rule before this. Everyone knew. Both of these guys were active players. Hey, do not do this. You will serve a suspension. To me, that's just, you wouldn't get my vote.
Yeah, I mean, part of it is just my inherent distrust on the logic behind and the systems that enforced anti-doping in sport, especially in the United States. I think a lot of it is a crock of shit.
And that's fair.
Loosely speaking. So, I mean, if I'm going to have that opinion, then I'm just not. Suspension or no, it's just not going to bother me either way.
And
I got a
totally fair opinion. Go ahead, Austin.
I got a question as to why I can't grasp my head around why A-Rod and Manny Ramirez would ever have any difference in vote percentage. I mean, they're both obviously Hall of Famers. It's not even debatable. I mean, you could say Manny cheated more, but A-Rod was well more involved, wink, wink. So, I mean, I don't know, why would their percentages ever be different? Who's voting for one and not the other? I have no idea how that makes sense.
Clemens' percentage is different because baseball writers are idiots.
I feel like that's just Yankee or Red Sox fans.
A-Rod's all of his advanced metrics are worlds better than Manny's.
But it doesn't matter if he's better or worse. They're both
first ballot Hall of Famers.
No, I get it. I'm just saying, they're different calibers of first ballot Hall of Famers.
Yeah,
like A-Rod is one of the. If you're putting up just the numbers, A-Rod is one of the 10 best hitters in baseball history.
Yeah,
he has almost, his WAR is almost 50 higher than Manny Ramirez.
I mean, do we really think there's anybody who voted no or didn't vote for Manny based on his numbers? I think that's impossible, right?
No, I've seen a couple.
I'm just saying.
There's
no shot that you can look. I mean, again, if you have a brain on inside your skull, there's no shot that you can look at a career slash of 312, 411, 585, accounting for a 996 career OPS with 555 home runs, and just say, nah. There's no shot. There's no chance. There's no chance you can do it.
Bo, is Manny on all 3 of your ballots as well?
Yeah.
Yes, on mine.
Wait, he's on yours, Mark?
No, he's not on mine. No,
this is like there's no fucking chance.
Yeah, there's no shot.
I will say that logic of mine is going to be tested in probably 6 or 7 years when Nelson Cruz comes on the ballot, because he failed a drug test and then proceeded to get better.
Yeah, but he failed the drug test, man. And especially, here's the thing: that's gonna be real cognitive dissonance if you vote for Nelson Cruz, especially right off the bat. If you don't have this inherent change of heart, because Nelson Cruz, he ain't A-Rod. He ain't Manny Ramirez.
He's not.
He got better after serving steroid suspension, and I would argue should be in the Hall of Fame, but he ain't those guys.
I'm not saying I'm going to change my thought process. It's just, in a few years, I'm going to have to look at it and be like, was I an idiot?
Right. That's why I'm saying, like, barring
Yeah.
a change of heart, it would be quite jarring to see.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that actually does it for the guys that I voted for personally. I had 9 players on my ballot. A-Rod, Manny. Oh, that's a lie. I forgot one. The 9th player on my ballot, the one guy that I think is really worth having the conversation around that we haven't talked about yet, unless you want to talk about the Jeff Kents or the Andy Pettits of the world, is shout out Bobby Abreu. Am I right, everybody? Free Bobby Abreu. Does he actually deserve to be in the Hall of Fame? Maybe. I don't really know. I think it's almost like a vibes case because like Bobby Abreu's numbers are good over the course of his career, right? They're good. 291. Didn't manage to hit 300 home runs. He did steal 400 bags. A career 128 OPS plus. A 60-win player over 18 years. It's not great. He has a Hall of Fame monitor rating, for example, if you were to look at it, of 95, so just slightly below the average right fielder in the Baseball Hall of Fame. And I don't know how many right fielders they are, but I assume a bit. I assume there's probably a few. I can look for sure.
Sorry, what was the question?
There are 28 right fielders in the Baseball Hall of Fame.
Yeah, right field is one of the more populated positions.
And he rates out at just slightly below or slightly around average of those players. Most similarly, Baseball Reference has him most similar to Luis Gonzalez, Bernie Williams, Dwight Evans, Garrett Anderson, those kinds of players. So I kind of just put him on there for vibes' sake. For whatever it's worth. I don't actually have a compelling argument. TBH.
He's also on mine, and most of it is that statistic that we used for a trivia question a couple weeks ago. 5 players with 2,400 hits, 1,400 walks, and 400 stolen bases. Like that's a really good class that he's in. Ricky Henderson. It was Ricky, Eddie Collins, and I forget what the other 2 were.
Barry Bonds,
and was it Mays? No, it wasn't Mays.
It was Joe Morgan.
I've heard of him.
Yeah,
but that's like a ridiculous class of players that he's in.
Yeah, I mean, but the real question that it comes up to it is like this is again the compiler versus rate question is like how much of that was gained by the fact that he had 10,000 career plate appearances. He played 18 years in the majors. That's a lot. That's a lot of time.
This is the thing with baseball writers because they're like, we want longevity, and then they're like, and people are like, okay, look at Bobby Abreu, and they're like, no, that's too much longevity.
Yeah,
no, I mean, like, and then they say we want a guy who is great for this number of years, and you say, okay, look at Johan Santana, and they're like, no, 7 years isn't nearly enough.
I think they probably get a little too extreme with it, and I do think that there's some middle ground to be had. Like I think there's something to be said about being really good for a long period of time, but simply being really good for a long period of time and compiling a bunch of numbers doesn't necessarily make you a Hall of Famer in that sense. And similarly, being great for a small amount of time, being like truly great for a super small amount of time doesn't necessarily make you a Hall of Famer, but I think those kinds of things can bolster your overall argument if you were to have one. So like on one hand, again, the fact that he reaches those milestones is important, and it is worth note. Obviously, it's a very small class, but on the other hand, I think it's fair to wonder, given the rest of his numbers that surround it, how much was supplanted by that longevity. And part of it is because he wasn't ever really that bad. Like that, that's what helped out. Like he was good for that long. Like that's what helped, like he had a career OPS, or he had an OPS plus below 100 3 times over the course of his career. His first 2 seasons in the majors when he played a combined 74 games. And then his final year in 2012, Oh, that's a lie. I didn't even notice that he came back and played in 2014.
Yeah, with the
3
Mets.
years over the course of his career. His last 2 years in the majors as a 38 and 40-year-old, and his first 2 years in the majors. So the other 14 seasons, he had 14 straight seasons with an OPS plus over 105. That's longevity. Like
Yeah.
that is important longevity, not just being in the league for a long time. That is being good for a decade and a half straight. You know?
Yeah. And that's why I think guys like him deserve more love. I doubt Josh Ross and either of you have Bobby Abreu on your ballot.
Nope.
I do not.
Well,
I have one more though.
That brings us, I think, to the last guy, and he's on mine, and that's Jeff Kent.
No.
Nope.
No.
No, am I forgetting someone?
Austin, are we on the same guy? Shortstop?
Nope.
Oh, so I assume Josh has Jimmy Rollins.
That's right.
Oh,
and-
I'm sorry. Jimmy Rollins isn't even close.
Not even close?
95
Why
career
the
OPS plus. In his career, he was a below average hitter, was nowhere near the defender that Omar Vizquel was, won a fraudulent MVP in 2006. His WAR was
Hall
like,
of Fame monitor of 121 for what it's worth, by the way.
hey,
Jesus Christ.
I don't care.
What a shit show here.
I put Jimmy Rollins.
Hey, I got a
in
guy.
my-
Fuck your guy. He's a piece of shit. Fuck you too.
Listen, I put Jimmy Rollins in my I broke it down into segments on mine. I had close but no cigar, which we didn't mention Mark Burley or Andy Pettit or Torrey Hunter.
That's my guy.
Torrey
Troy
Hunter.
Hunter or Mark Burley?
Andy Pettit.
Andy Pettit.
Oh, yeah, I had them in close, and then my final section was sorry guys, led by Jimmy Rollins, and then the rest of nobodies we talked about.
All right. Austin, why don't you give me the case for Andy Pettit?
Listen, I know you look at Andy Pettit's stats, and then you look at freaking Mark Burley's stats. You're saying to yourself, that's the same guy.
Exact same player.
But-
they're the Spider-Man meme.
I'm going to make a really bad team argument here and say that Andy Pettit won a lot of World Series, pitched in 17 different postseasons.
Mm-hmm.
Insane. Whatever team he was on, he was a useful part of the pitching rotation. He was good enough to be in every rotation that was on a playoff team. That's got to mean something, making the playoffs in 20 seasons or whatever. Oh, I mean, I feel like he was just a winner, and he kind of was a memorable MLB player, which is also what I think helps you get into the Hall of Fame. So there you go.
Oh, wait. Doesn't Mark Burley have a perfect game as well?
He does.
Yes. On Mother's Day, right?
Yeah.
No,
that's Dallas Braden, I think.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
it was Dallas Braden.
Dallas
Yeah.
Braden.
Mark Burley's though, that great play he's got with like the between the legs glove toss.
Oh, yeah, when he crossed the baseline. Did that
Mark
crazy
Burley.
thing.
What was the stat? It was 14, I think. 14 straight years over 200 innings.
Not
Jesus.
bad, Leo.
And the last one of those, when he was with Toronto, was the last season of his career. He had 198 and 2/3 innings. He was an inning and a third short of 15 straight.
Wow. All right. Mark, you had Jeff Kent as your final guy. And this is actually an interesting case because I'm almost certain I voted for Jeff Kent before on this very show.
It's just in general, if you have the most home runs all time by a player at your position, you're a Hall of Famer. I mean,
Yeah, that makes sense.
Jeff Kent at 351 home runs as a second baseman. He had 377 for his career. They came at third or whatever.
Sure.
351 home runs as a second baseman, most by anyone to ever play the position. To me, that's just a Hall of Famer. It's quite simple. He seemed like an asshole. Yeah, he wasn't a great defender. The WAR doesn't back him up. Sometimes it's just a simple case. And in my opinion, Jeff Kent's always been a simple case. And I don't understand why he doesn't get the love.
Yeah, I don't get how you can. I mean, the freaking baseball Raiders are all big totals guys, big the main stats guys, home runs, RBIs, whatever. And you have a guy who's clearly probably the best slugging second baseman, especially longevity wise, has the highest totals. I don't understand. What are we missing here?
Yeah, that's fair. For what it's worth, the most similar player to his career, according to Baseball Reference, is Robinson Cano.
And Cano was well on track if he didn't have multiple PED suspensions.
I mean, I think even if you take Cano's career, what it was, and just pretend he never did steroids, I think he's still probably
Yeah,
get
he's a
in.
Hall of Famer.
Right.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely. Do you have Kent, Austin?
he was my 11th, so
Oh, okay.
he was off.
Yeah, it didn't quite make it for me, and I not literally for no particular reason other than just didn't end up making it. I mean, the argument that you make is very simple, and it makes a lot of sense. So it's not really something I can refute. So. All right, so the official Hot Stove Hall of Fame ballot, as voted on by us. Reminder: 3 out of 4 of us had to vote for these players. We ended up with 9 players this year on our ballot.
Huge class.
Huge class. Wishful thinking will literally never happen. We'll be lucky to get one of these guys in the Hall of Fame.
One guy is going to get in this.
Kind of
year,
is crazy because I feel like
according
I'm
to
the
the
guy
tracker.
every year that like I only give one
Who's
guy
that
out.
guy? According to the tracker?
Scott Rowland. Scott Rowland right
Rowland.
now is the only one trending over 75%. He's at 82%, I think.
It's disgusting. I hate these people.
And by the way, the tracker stats always go down, so Scott Rowland might not get in. We might be looking at a just Fred McGriff class this year.
Who the hell's Fred McGriff? Oh, he's the dead guy.
Nope.
Much like Crime Dog.
Isn't he
not
dead?
No. Very alive.
Yeah, much love to the Crime Dog, but I'm going to say it again, or I've said it once, and I'm going to say it again. If there are no modern era players on a ballot that deserve to be I'm sorry, not if. There will never be a situation, never, period, point blank, never be a situation in which there are no modern era players that do not deserve to be in the Hall of Fame or deserve to be in the Hall of Fame on a singular ballot. And I maintain that if you're a member of the Baseball Writers Association of America and you're one of these frauds who leaves your ballot blank, it should be taken away from you on the spot.
Mm-hmm.
On the spot. So that's that. Anyways, 9 players on the official Hot Stove ballot. We have Francisco Rodriguez, Billy Wagner, Carlos Beltran, Scott Rowland, Andrew Jones, Gary Sheffield, Todd Helton, Alex Rodriguez, and Manny Ramirez. Congratulations to the official 2023 Hot Stove Hall of Fame class. Some of you have made it multiple times before. That's not our fault. Take it up with the writers. Yeah.
Yeah. They stink.
They stink. They stink poopy. Trust me, we'll be doing this again next year. And we'll probably be talking about a lot of these same guys next year. Who actually? Let's talk about that.
I'll get it up.
Yeah, 2024 ballot. I want to see who's looking at first ballot status next year.
Ooh, we got some interesting ones next year.
Yes, I'm looking at it right now. So if you want to pull it up, Mark, we have potential. I'll just list off the players who their Hall of Fame rating is
out of here
70 or higher. How about that?
Yeah, we'll sort by. Can I not sort by Hall of Fame either? Do it up here.
You can.
Sure.
We have Adrian Beltre, who I feel like is a first ballot Hall of Fame shoo-in, partially because of just how beloved he is in the sport. We have Adrian Beltre. We have Matt Holliday, first ballot next year. Chase Utley, Joe Mauer, Adrian Gonzalez, Bartolo Colon, Big Sexy, Jose Bautista, the guy that follows everyone on Twitter.
Except me. Follow me on Twitter, please.
Mark. Friend of the show, Jose Reyes, and David Wright, all first ballot consideration next year. It's going to be a loaded group, and as we move forward, we're talking about a lot of guys too now that like we watched play recently.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like Adrian Beltre feels like I think he was playing baseball like 3 years ago. It feels like. You could have convinced me that he played in the shortened 2020 season, and I would believe you.
Looking at this, I'd say there's 2 guys I'd automatically vote for.
Beltre and who?
Joe Mauer.
Okay.
Yeah, Joe Mauer, just off rip, Joe Mauer probably gets my vote as well.
Yeah. Looking
Yeah, I
into
mean, Beltray shouldn't even be a conversation, right? I mean,
yeah.
Yeah.
The rest of them, I doubt would get my vote. David Wright is the one that I would have to consider.
David Wright is the ultimate peak versus longevity question, though, because
Yes.
his injuries ruined him.
And I tend to lean, if you had a peak like that, similar to Joe Mauer, whom that's the argument for Mauer because concussions ruined the end of his career.
Francisco Cervelli type beat. Sorry.
Mark, could you just scroll down one?
Oh. What do you want?
Just scroll down a little. Oh, you can't.
No, I
rank it like
selected just those guys.
You son of a bitch. The guy like right below David Wright. I guess not right below, but 74. His is the 68. It's that dude.
That dude
Brandon
BP.
Phillips.
That dude BP.
Yeah, man. That dude BP.
Is anyone else?
He's a 4-time Gold Glover.
Jim Johnson, Denard Span,
Denard
still huge.
Red Wings legend.
Denard Span actually might have been playing professional baseball like 2 years ago.
These are not official yet. These are just guys that might be on the ballot.
Yeah. I understand.
Chase Headley, Chris Tillman.
Not to be confused with his brother Pat.
Oh, Jesus.
Is that true? Were they related?
No.
Oh.
How could I pass right over? Big Game James.
Oh,
the man who gave
the reason that Fernando Tatis plays for the Padres.
The man who gave himself the nickname Big Game James and then stunk in the playoffs.
Yeah, and then allowed a home run to Bartolo Colon, which forever changed the fabric of this next wave of Major League Baseball.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Shout out to Big Game James. Sure. I'm sure we'll be talking about you next year, James. So before we get out of here, we're going to go ahead and do our FanDuel lineups as we do. So anybody wants to start. By the way, the Sabres are up 6-0 tonight.
I got out of hand.
The Kings right now.
Kate Johnson has all the goals, I'm assuming.
I can look.
Got the first.
Yeah, I can look to see. It's awesome that the Sabres still have the best offense in hockey. But they should probably do something to
He's had 2, Mark.
Help out.
I will go first with my FanDuel lineup because I hate it and I just want to get it over with.
Tage Thompson ended with 3 points, by the way. He also had an apple.
But yeah, my FanDuel lineup. Oh boy. So we're going with a stack against the Lions defense as we normally do. And if you know anything about who the Lions are playing this week, that's the New York Jets.
Mike White,
Zonovan, Bam Knight, and Garrett Wilson.
It's not even a bad idea.
It's not a bad idea, but Mike White was folded like a lawn chair on Sunday.
Oh, dude, that was one of the most one of the cleanest destructive hits I've ever seen in my life.
It's the hardest legal hit you can pull off.
That was like a spear. That was like Edge hitting a spear in like the 2007 Royal Rumble when he came back. You know what I'm talking about, Josh. It was 2007 or 2008, whatever Royal Rumble that was. Like him jazz of coming back from his neck injury. Like Edge hitting a spear in that match. That was like Matt Milano absolutely crushing Mike White on Sunday.
It gave me Gore vibes. Even more deadly than the spear. The Rhino Gore.
So I went with the triple stack against the Lions, but I went full game stack through one against the Jets. Sauce Gardner is going to be all over Amon-Ra St. Brown, so give me DJ Chark to get open a little bit. He's been a decent little target there on Detroit. 7 targets last week, 6 the week prior, 5 the week prior to that. But the last 2 weeks, over 90 yards, had a touchdown against Minnesota. So I like DJ Chark to get open. That's my game stack. My other running back to pair with Bam Knight is Miles Sanders. Eagles are playing the Bears. Bears run defense is stinky poo-poo. Their entire defense is stinky poo-poo. Miles Sanders has been absolutely lights out for the Birds. in a game
Very
that I
big.
think they're going to be running the ball a lot because they're going to be up big early.
Yeah, I mean, watch out for a Boston Scott touchdown.
Oh yeah, there will be a Boston Scott.
No. This is a Kenny G game.
It could actually,
All right,
yeah,
that
it could
makes
be a
sense.
Kenny
Yeah,
G game.
watch out for a Kenneth Gainwell touchdown.
I went with Austin's favorite strategy: pick a wide receiver against the Tennessee Titans. I didn't do it with Keenan Allen as the Chargers are playing the Titans. I went with Joshua Palmer, mainly because I didn't have the money for Keenan Allen. So went with
That's
Joshua
what you
Palmer.
think for.
Target share has been up and down a little bit. 2 weeks ago, we had 11 targets. This past week, he had 6. So looking for a bounce back from Palmer. Tight end, I went with George Kittle. Brock Purdy is going to be the quarterback. He needs a safety blanket. What better safety blanket than a tight end like Kittle, especially with Deebo Samuel being out? So, like Kittle there. In my flex, I went with Isaiah Pacheco. Chiefs are playing the Houston Texans. They're going to be running the ball a lot. So Pacheco at 7,600, I felt was decent value for another running back. And then my defense, because it doesn't matter, but it does when you're playing the Saints, is the Atlanta Falcons.
Got some
Nice.
pieces I like in there for sure.
I hate it so much, but I feel like it's going to be good.
It's
I
not
hate
bad.
my lineup even more. Not gonna lie, I like hate mine. Who would like to go next?
I'll go. This is the Taco Bell Take It to the Dumper lineup of the week. We're gonna start off with my game stack or my quarterback stack. This dude started cooking last week. He hadn't been cooking all year.
All right,
And then
before
he marched
you
into
talk
my
about
home.
Russell Wilson,
Yeah,
I'm not sure he plays this week.
neither am I. It's very much a question mark.
I'll say my
But
yeah.
running assumption now because of the new rules is that if someone gets a concussion, they probably miss a game.
Yeah.
So that's just
My hope is that because he's just unlimited, that he will play.
yeah, Mr. Unlimited.
He has supernatural powers. Jesus is good to him. They're eliminated, but he still wants to cook. You see this up here? Right up there? This
Mhm.
boy want to cook.
Yeah.
So I got him and paired up with his why'd you get rid of him? That's my boy.
No, I thought there was like a cross back there that you were pointing at.
No, he was pointing at Russell Wilson.
Oh yeah, I forgot Russell Wilson was the picture, if I'm being honest.
Judy's been getting pissed the last couple of weeks, so I paired him with him. He finally got 2 touchdowns last week. So
3.
Broncos? Judy had 3 last week. Wow.
Yeah.
So like the Broncos are good. I don't
No,
know. It might be. Who's to say? They are eliminated from playoff contention though, so that's probably it. Then Mark, you said this thing about money. You just gotta keep spending money. Just keep spending it. Derrick Henry, 8,900. Take him. Pacheco. The Houston Texans defense does suck. It's okay. It was a valid strategy to take both Dallas running backs last week. It wasn't that bad for the price point. So we'll take Pacheco. I could afford Keenan Allen. Everybody can. You want him? You take him. Keenan Allen. He's on my team. He had like 13 targets last week because now that he's back, he's the healthiest man alive, and he's just going to catch 40 balls in the next game. So screw Keenan Allen. I hate Keenan Allen, by the way. Can't stand him. But he's on my team. Love it. Love when you can see those greened out goblins too. Seeing the defensive opponent ranking, 232s on my list so far, so that's pretty good. And then I bought CD because there seems to be a little bit of civil unrest. Like the Cowboys just won't use him in a game, and then everyone will be like, "Oh, CD Lamb's the best receiver," and then he'll get 12 targets next week. So, they can exploit that Jacksonville secondary. Speaking about Jacksonville, that boy Evan Ingram, with one of the best tight end lines we've seen in the last decade, coming out, putting on a clinic. I took him. He's cheap. Dallas Cowboys are on like their 5th string cornerbacks. I don't know who's going to be guarding him. Probably like Sam Williams, a Dookie linebacker. Who's to say? Get that kid open. And then I also went with the Falcons defense because mad cheap and they're playing the Saints. Could be a close game. They could actually propel one of them into the tops in that division. By the way, it's now turning out like it's now every week. It looks more and more like the Cowboys' worst loss is Tampa Bay, week 1. that's really what's gonna stick them is like that was their worst loss because they just
That was this year.
dumpster fire. Yeah, their
God.
division's a dumpster fire. And then finally, I know you're thinking, wow, I mean, has he had a guy who's been less than 7,400? No. So for this pick, we went with a guy who was just recently signed off the practice squad. He should play this week for the Giants. It's Ricky Seals-Jones. Who doesn't love little Ricky? Who doesn't love little Ricky? It was between him.
God.
It was between him and former Jets hopeful Chris Herndon. But I come to find out that he was recently released by the New Orleans Saints. So little Ricky, was working out for Indy in November, early November, and I believe he is now signed to the Giants. So let's go, little Ricky.
Here's my question before Austin gets started with his lineup. When is Scott Podsednik going to be on the Hall of Fame ballot?
Oh, well, come and gone, my friend.
Damn it. All
Yeah,
right. Austin, why don't you hit me with your FanDuel lineup?
All right. Me and Mark, we ride together now. We have the same brain. I got Mike White and Garrett Wilson. It's my stack this week. It's exciting. Running backs, I'm going Zeke. Hey, if I told you a running back who's going to get more carries than the guy on the same team as him and more goal line work than the guy on the same team as him, and you can get him for like $800 cheaper, I mean, what are we doing out here? Zeke over Pollard all the way for just the value. Then I'm going Pacheco. Mark talked about him as well. We're on the same brain. I mean, let's be honest here. Took a guy who just keeps getting touchdowns, Christian Watson. I mean, why is he going to stop this week? He's playing a bum team. They stink. I could play for him. Baker Mayfield sucks. Don't at me. All right, and then moving on, Michael Pittman against Minnesota. I mean, I like Pittman. I don't like the Colts, but they have to score. I mean, the Vikings defense is just atrocious. So I imagine a lot of scoring. Pittman will find a way to get 10-plus targets in that game. I don't doubt it. Tight end, the only person who's probably not injured or dead on the Patriots on offense, Hunter Henry. They're all hurt. Mac Jones is getting pissed. He just wants to throw the ball. Matt Patricia sucks. So that's shambles. Mac Jones comes out. He has a career day, 404. Hunter Henry gets all 4. And then my flex, Devonta Smith. I just like going him every week because he's not that expensive and seems like his upside's always 100 yards and a touchdown. He's getting a lot of deep looks. Last week's was really, honestly, a lucky touchdown, but the target was there. And then my defense, I don't understand why they're so cheap. I'm going to just go to the Denver Broncos defense at home against Colt McCoy.
That's fair. That's totally fair. All right, round it out here. I got my lineup. It's kind of stinky. I'm not going to lie. So game stack, we're going to be looking at Monday Night Football between the Los Angeles Rams and the Green Bay Packers. I'll be going with Aaron Rodgers as my quarterback and bringing with him Alan Lazard and Aaron Jones. This is a game, especially if Aaron Donald is out. I think the Packers might be able to move the ball like they did 2 weeks ago against Chicago. Similarly, poopy defense. But also, what the Packers can't do? They can't stop the run. And I do expect this game to be competitive, which is something I never really thought I'd say with how bad this Rams team is. But as we talked about it last week, I think Baker Mayfield at the very least provides a competent NFL offense with it. Which means that Cam Akers is going to be involved. And I'll be taking Cam Akers as one of my other running backs. Secondary game stack, Chargers, Titans. I think this is 2 players taking advantage of weaknesses on the defenses they're playing. Derrick Henry on one side of the ball, Keenan Allen on the other side of the ball. Chargers can't stop the run. The Titans really can't stop much of anything in the pass, especially anything over the middle of the field. Michael Pittman against the Vikings for all the reasons that Austin just said. And then my tight end, the golden matchup, is here. And you know what? Maybe Brett Rippon will come out here and sling it to the rookie sensation, Greg Dulcich. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but truly, this Arizona defense, there's one every year. There's one defense every year, and this year it's the Cardinals who give up all of the points and specifically all of the touchdowns to tight ends. The Cardinals are that team. Greg Dulcich is that tight end this week. And that leaves me with enough money for the Atlanta Falcons defense as well against the Saints. The Saints are a mess, to say the least. And defenses don't matter. And Mark is having a great time, by the way, if you've been noticing. Scrolling through random baseball players.
These are friends of the show: Carl Crawford, Jose Reyes, and Scott Podsednik.
Yeah, Scott Podsednik, man. Friend of the show. Where's Coco Crisp?
He was the next one I was going to do.
Okay. Yeah. Shout out Scott Podsednik. Shout out Placido Polanco as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, those are our FanDuel lineups. So before we get out of here, just a reminder, next week we'll be back with our top 10 movies of 2022, a bit of an after dark episode, if you will. The following week, we'll be doing the 2022 Stovey Awards to end out the year. In the meantime, if you want to see some shit from us, make sure to follow us on Twitter at Hot Stove Pod. That's at Hot Stove Pod on Twitter. Here on the YouTube channel, subscribe to the channel, like this video, leave a comment if you feel like commenting, and also hit the notification bell so you know when we post new videos and when we go live on our live streams. I know this episode ran a little bit long, so if you're still here, thank you for watching. We love you, and we will see you next time.
Yep. Peace.